They say old houses keep secrets. Some whisper them through cracked windows, some keep them nailed under the floorboards, and some hide them behind walls. In the quiet summer of 1961, Texas, the Aldridge family learned this the hard way. What they uncovered in their home should have never been found, and what was sealed should have stayed sealed. Because once the room was opened, the family was gone, vanished. The Aldridges weren't remarkable people. John Aldridge worked as a mechanic at a small garage off Highway 45. His wife, Mary, was a schoolteacher at the local elementary school. They had 2 children, Daniel, 12 years old, quiet but sharp, and little Anna, only 8, a chatterbox with a nervous laugh that always came when she was scared. They moved into a farmhouse just outside Huntsville, Texas in early spring. It was cheap, larger than they could have afforded otherwise, and John liked the idea of restoring something with character. The house itself was built in the late 1800s, tall ceilings, sagging porch, brick chimney, and a sprawling basement that smelled like wet stone even in summer. Locals gave polite smiles when they heard which house the Aldridges had bought. Too polite. The kind of smiles that hide discomfort. The previous owner had passed away 2 years earlier, alone. No heirs, no family. The house had stood empty, except for teenagers daring each other to spend a night inside. They never lasted long. The realtor brushed it off. People spoke easily in these parts, she said. Old wood creaks, bats in the attic, nothing more. But in their first week, Mary caught a neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Hawkins, staring at the house from the edge of the road. When Mary waved, the woman shook her head and muttered, "Some doors are meant to stay shut, Mrs. Aldridge. Remember that." Mary thought it was just small-town superstition, but the words dug into her. At first, it was little things. John would misplace his tools in the basement. A hammer left on the workbench would turn up near the furnace. A wrench he swore he'd put in the toolbox would vanish entirely. Mary complained of drafts in the kitchen, as if someone had opened a door behind her. But no doors were open. Daniel told his parents that Anna was talking to someone in her room at night. When John checked, she was sitting up in bed, facing the wall, whispering, "Don't be sad. We'll let you out soon." Anna didn't remember saying it the next morning. The house's basement became John's project. He wanted to reinforce the beams, maybe even turn part of it into a workshop. On June 9, 1961, while knocking loose old plaster, his hammer rang out hollow. The wall didn't echo like stone should. Curious, he chipped away more. Beneath the plaster was brick, a section of wall that didn't match the rest of the foundation. A sealed doorway. Mary thought it was storage. Probably just a root cellar they closed off. But John felt something off. The bricks were newer than the surrounding stone, but the mortar had dark stains as if it had been sealed in a hurry. That night, he couldn't stop staring at it. Daniel later wrote in a notebook found in the ruins of the house, the only thing ever recovered. June 10, 1961, 11:42 p.m. I heard tapping from the basement, like someone knocking from inside the wall. Anna heard it too. She laughed at first, then cried. I told Dad, but he told me it was rats. Mom didn't sleep. I could hear her pacing. The next morning, John decided to break it open. On June 11, 1961, John set up his tools. He told the kids to stay upstairs. Mary stood by the steps, wringing her hands. With every brick he pried free, the air grew colder. By the time he had cleared the archway, the basement smelled like earth after rain, wet, metallic, almost like iron. The opening yawned black. Daniel swore later in his notebook that he heard a sigh escape, as though the room itself exhaled. John shone a flashlight inside. Dust curled in the beam. At first the room seemed small, stone walls, low ceiling. But something was wrong with the shadows. They stretched deeper than the beam reached, as though the room was wider than the house allowed. Mary begged him to wait, to seal it again. But John shook his head. It's just space. Nothing more. He stepped inside. Inside, the room was perfectly preserved, as if untouched since the day it was sealed. A small wooden table, half rotted, sat in the corner. A broken chair leaned against the wall. Strange markings had been carved into the stone. Circles, intersecting lines, crude figures with hollow eyes. In the center, a mirror stood upright, covered by a dust-choked cloth. The air was thick, heavy, hard to breathe. Daniel described it in his notebook. When Dad walked in, the flashlight flickered. Mom grabbed my shoulder so hard it hurt. I thought I saw someone move in the mirror, but the cloth was still on it. John inspected the walls. The markings weren't random. They formed a pattern, repeating. He muttered under his breath, counting the lines. 13. Always 13. That night, the Aldridges heard the noises again. At 2:17 a.m., Mary shook John awake. The sound of footsteps echoed from the basement. Slow, heavy. But when John opened the basement door, the noise stopped. He left it open, listening. Anna whispered from her bedroom, "They're out now." John asked who. She only giggled and rolled over. A neighbor, Mr. Harlan, later gave a statement. On the night of June 11th, I saw lights flickering in the Aldridge basement window, though they had a lantern down there, but it didn't move like lantern light. It pulsed. Then I heard what sounded like singing, low, like a hymn, but twisted. It stopped all of a sudden. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The final entry from Daniel's notebook in part 1 reads, June 12th, 1961, 3:02 a.m. I went to the basement door. I don't know why. I could hear someone whispering. It was a man's voice, but not Dad's. It said, "Come look." When I leaned close, the door was cold like metal. Anna stood behind me and said, "Don't be scared. Danny, they already know your name." I didn't tell Mom and Dad. I don't think they'd believe me. On June 13th, 1961, John gathered his tools and said he was going to clear out the sealed room properly. He told the kids to stay upstairs, but Daniel couldn't resist sneaking halfway down the steps. He watched his father pull the cloth from the mirror. For a moment, the flashlight beam glared off the glass, blinding him. Then he realized the reflection didn't match the room. In the mirror, the Aldridge family stood together, but behind them were dozens more figures. Pale, blurred, their mouths all open in silent screams. The entry ends there. By the morning of June 13th, 1961, the house felt different. The Aldridge family went about their routine. Breakfast, chores, John tinkering in the garage, but silence clung to the rooms like dust. Daniel wrote later in his notebook, "I couldn't stop thinking about the mirror." Dad didn't say what he saw, but he hasn't been the same since. He keeps looking at us like he's counting. That night, things got worse. June 13th, 1961, 11:48 p.m. Mary reported hearing the front door slam, though it was locked. When she checked, the lock was still engaged. June 14th, 1961, 2:17 a.m. Daniel woke to whispering in his room. A man's voice said, "Closer." When he opened his eyes, Anna was standing at the foot of his bed, pointing toward the basement. June 14th, 1961, 3:06 a.m. John heard footsteps moving in circles downstairs. Heavy, dragging footsteps, too slow to be his children. He grabbed a lantern and went down, but the sound stopped the second he reached the bottom step. Neighbors later recalled John complaining that his tools kept disappearing. He accused Daniel of moving them, but the boy swore he hadn't touched them. Then on June 15th, John found his missing hammer inside the sealed room. It lay at the base of the mirror, as if it had been placed there carefully. The family hadn't entered since the night it was uncovered. Mary confided in a colleague at the school. "The children are different. Anna won't eat, she just stares at the basement door. Daniel keeps scratching his arms until they bleed, saying he wants to feel awake. John insists on keeping the door open. He says we need to let the air move through. I want to leave." But he won't hear it. Her colleague thought she was simply stressed. Mr. and Mrs. Harlan, who lived down the road, gave their account to the local paper years later. "We saw lights in their windows almost every night. Not electric lights, more like lanterns flickering. Sometimes we'd hear a girl laughing, then crying. Once at about 3 a.m., we saw all 4 of them standing in the yard, perfectly still, looking at the house like strangers. When we called out, they didn't answer. Just turned and went back inside together." Fragments of Anna's small notebook were found decades later. The handwriting was childish, uneven. June 15th, 1961, 11:02 p.m. The man in the mirror says he will teach me songs. He hums them when I close my eyes. Danny doesn't like it, but he hears them too. Mommy says I have to stop, but she doesn't understand. The man says Mommy is scared because she can't see yet. On the night of June 16th, Mary heard Anna crying from the basement. She ran downstairs and found the girl standing inside the sealed room, the mirror uncovered. When Mary tried to pull her out, the door slammed shut. She pounded and screamed until John forced it open. Anna was standing still, smiling faintly. When asked why she went inside, she said, "They called me by my name." Mary demanded they leave the house. John refused. He insisted it was just children's games, stress, imagination. But his eyes gave him away. He was terrified, too. Police note on June 17th, a patrol officer recorded a note in his logbook. Drove past Aldridge property. At 2:40 a.m., I thought I saw someone at the upstairs window. I looked like a young girl. When I backed up to check, the window was empty. Curtains flutter, though no wind. Over the next few days, the disturbances escalated. The mirror would fog over in the middle of the day. Though the room was dry, the smell of wet earth filled the kitchen, especially near the floorboards. Daniel's notebook mentioned hearing breathing in the walls. Mary started keeping a crucifix in her pocket, though she wasn't religious. June 18, 1961, 12:33 a.m. Dad is different. He doesn't look tired, but he talks like someone else. Tonight he told me, "You don't need to be afraid when it's your turn." I don't know what he means. Anna hums all the time now, songs I don't know. The basement smells like rain. I hate this house. June 18th, 1961, 3:17 a.m. I couldn't sleep. Went to the basement door. It was open. I swear I saw people moving inside, but not Mom or Dad. Too many. They looked blurry, like smudges in old photos. One of them turned, and I think it was me, but older. I shut the door and ran. On the night of June 19th, 1961, the Aldridge house shook violently. The sound of something dragging chains echoed from the basement. Mary ran to the children's room, but both beds were empty. She screamed, searching the house. John stood at the top of the basement stairs, staring down. His face was blank. He whispered, "They're already inside." When Mary pushed past him, she saw the sealed room's mirror fully uncovered. Anna and Daniel stood before it, holding hands. Their reflections weren't theirs anymore. Dozens of pale figures crowded behind the glass, all whispering, all smiling, and then one by one. The children stepped forward, not into the room, into the mirror. The last thing Mary wrote in her journal before it ended. "They're gone, and the glass is breathing." After the night Anna and Daniel vanished into the mirror, silence fell over the Aldridge house. Neighbors noticed Mary stopped coming outside. John was seen at odd hours pacing the yard, sometimes staring into the fields as though waiting for something to arrive. The house seemed to breathe heavier with each passing day. Recovered from the ruins years later. A torn entry in Mary Aldridge's handwriting reads June 20th, 1961, 2:11 a.m. "My babies are gone, but I hear them still. Their laughter drifts through the walls, faint and hollow. John says they are safe. Just learning. I don't believe him. I dream of glass breaking, but when I wake the mirror is whole. Her entry ends in smeared ink, as though written through tears. John grew obsessed with the sealed room. He spent hours inside, sketching the carvings on the walls into his mechanic's notebook. When Mary begged him to stop, he told her, "This isn't a curse. It's a system. It's how the house survives. How we survive." He believed the carvings weren't random scratches but instructions. On June 21st, John pried open a corner of the sealed room and discovered a wooden chest buried beneath the stone floor. It was bound with rusted iron, carved with the same circle and line symbols as the walls. Mary said the chest reeked of damp earth and copper. When John forced it open, what they found inside would confirm their fears. Inside were fragments of old journals wrapped in oilcloth, several small bones, too delicate to be from animals, a necklace of coins, each stamped with years that hadn't yet come. Mary screamed when she touched one. It was warm, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The oilcloth journals belonged to the Carter family, who had owned the property in the late 1800s. One entry, dated October 12, 1889, read, "The room must remain sealed. It feeds when opened. It shows us what will come and what price it demands." We thought it was a blessing at first, but the more we looked, the more it looked back. Another, from March 2, 1891. "My boy Thomas vanished into the glass. My wife swore she heard him sing in the walls. I sealed it again. If you read this, do not break it open. Better to starve than to feed it again." County police logs uncovered decades later revealed multiple reports tied to the property. 97. Missing child, last seen near the Carter residence. Case unsolved. 1924. 3 drifters vanished after being offered work by a man on the Old Farm Road. 1939. Officer report. Lights in upper windows, though house abandoned. Infant cries reported by multiple witnesses. House inspected. Found empty. The pattern was clear. Every time the sealed room was opened, people disappeared. Mary grew desperate. On June 22nd, she packed clothes, intending to flee to her sister's house. But when she tried to wake John, he refused. "If you leave," he told her coldly, "you'll never see them again. The room keeps them. Only I can bring them back." Mary wrote in her journal that night, "He isn't my husband anymore. He stares into the glass for hours, whispering names. Sometimes I think I see another face wearing his skin in the reflection. My John is gone." On June 23rd, Mary claimed the mirror began showing things even when covered. Shapes pressed against the cloth, stretching the fabric like hands desperate to claw their way through. Daniel's voice called to her from beneath the cover, "Mom, please. It's cold. Let us out." But when she pulled the cloth away, there was nothing except her own reflection and dozens of shadowed faces behind it. The final surviving page from Daniel's notebook, the rest charred, reads June 23rd, 1961, 1:44 a.m. "I'm not supposed to write anymore. The man says if I do, he'll take my hand. He says paper doesn't belong here, only walls. Anna sings with him now. I don't like the song, but sometimes I wake up and my mouth is moving to it. Dad says I should be proud. Mom cries all the time. I think we're already gone. No further entries exist. A traveling salesman who stopped by the Aldridge property that summer gave a statement decades later in a radio interview. I knocked, and Mr. Aldridge answered. His eyes were strange, glossy, like a film covered them. Behind him, I saw the little girl standing at the top of the stairs. She looked pale, not sick, just thin. She smiled at me, but her teeth were dark, like they'd been dipped in ink. Mr. Aldridge told me to leave. I didn't argue. By late June, the Aldridges had pieced together the horrifying truth. The sealed room was not in storage. It was a ritual chamber. Families before them had discovered it, opened it, and vanished in turn. The mirror wasn't glass at all. It was a threshold, holding back something hungry, and once opened, it demanded to be fed. John, however, believed it could be controlled. He claimed the markings on the walls were instructions for balance. Mary wanted to destroy it. John wanted to worship it. On June 24th, Mary finally entered the sealed room alone. She carried a lantern, determined to smash the mirror. Instead, she found something new. The wall opposite the mirror was cracked open, revealing a shallow cavity. Inside lay a body, perfectly preserved, though centuries old. Its eyes were wide, mouth frozen in a silent scream. Around its neck hung the same coin necklace she had seen in the chest. When she touched it, the body crumbled to ash, but the necklace remained warm in her palm. She dropped it in horror, but later that night, she swore she saw Anna wearing it in her dreams. On June 25th, 1961, Mary's final surviving journal entry reads, "The mirror showed me something tonight. Not my children, not my husband. It showed me myself, standing in front of the house years from now, staring at the ruins. Behind me the door opened again, and something stepped through wearing my face." Her entry ends abruptly. That same night, neighbors reported hearing screams from the Aldridge property. Not one, but many overlapping, rising in unison like a choir. When silence finally fell, the house looked dark again, but in the basement, the mirror breathed. By the last week of June 1961, the Aldridge farmhouse no longer belonged to the Aldridge family. The neighbors said the windows burned with light some nights, though the house had no electricity in those rooms. Others swore they heard hymns carried on the wind, songs no church would ever claim. Inside, John was losing himself to the room. Mary clutched her children's notebooks like rosaries. The mirror waited, and then it opened. On June 26th, Mary recorded her husband in her journal. "John sits before the mirror every night now. He doesn't speak to me. He whispers names I don't know. Sometimes I think he's talking to himself, but when I look closer, I see his reflection moving differently than him. Once I swear I saw it smile when he didn't. That evening, John told her flatly, "They're not gone, Mary. They're learning. The room is teaching them." She begged him to leave. He shook his head. "If we leave, we lose them. If we stay, we become more." At 2:14 a.m. on June 27th, Mary was woken by footsteps outside her bedroom door. Thinking it was Anna, she opened it. A figure stood in the hall, small, pale, hair falling over its face. "Anna," she whispered. The figure tilted its head. When the hair shifted aside, it wasn't Anna. The face was cracked like porcelain, dark lines spidering from the eyes. The mouth opened, too wide, impossibly wide, and whispered, "Open wider." When Mary screamed, John ran to her. But he didn't look surprised. He only said, "They're closer now." From that night onward, the house itself began to change. Doors refused to stay shut, opening on their own. Hallways stretched longer than they should, leading to walls that hadn't existed before. The smell of earth and copper filled every room, no matter how many windows Mary opened. Daniel's last burnt notebook fragment reads, "The house is bigger inside now. I counted 17 steps from the kitchen to the stairs yesterday. Today it was 34. Mom doesn't believe me. Dad says it's growing." On June 28th, Mary finally snapped. She stormed into the sealed room with a hammer, determined to smash the mirror. John followed, furious. "Don't touch it," he shouted. Mary swung the hammer anyway. The instant the metal struck glass, the mirror rippled, not shattered, but waved like water. The reflection blinked out, and in its place stretched a corridor of black stone, lined with pale figures that watched silently. Then the figures stepped forward. From the center of the mirror crawled something larger. At first it looked human, a tall figure in dark, ragged clothing. But as it leaned into the room, its face shifted constantly, flipping through expressions like pages of a book. A child, a man, a woman, a skull. Coins glimmered where its eyes should have been. The voice that filled the cellar wasn't a sound. It was heavy. The debt. Mary dropped the hammer. The door. John fell to his knees. The blood. And then the mirror split open wider. Witnesses reported screams that night. One described them as a family choir of terror. Inside, Mary tried to drag John away, but he resisted, chanting words that weren't English. His reflection grinned at her from the mirror, even as his real face wept. Anna and Daniel appeared again at the edges of the glass, hands pressed to the inside. They mouthed words she couldn't hear. Their eyes were black pits. Mary screamed, "Give them back!" The entity tilted its ever-shifting face. Already taken. At that moment, every door and window in the house slammed. Neighbors claimed the sound carried through the valley like gunfire. Mary ran upstairs, but the hallway stretched endlessly. She sprinted, but the stairs retreated from her. Rooms rearranged themselves, door frames leading back into the same corridor she'd just escaped. Meanwhile, the mirror bled light, flooding the basement with a glow like molten gold. Shadows of dozens, maybe hundreds, filled the walls, mouths open in silent scream. Mary tried one final act. She returned to the sealed room with kerosene. She splashed it across the walls, over the symbols, onto the mirror itself. Her journal, found half charred near the ruins, contained the final legible words. "If fire can seal it, then let it burn. Let it take me with it. Better ashes than chains." She struck a match. For a moment, flames swallowed the chamber. The mirror writhed like liquid. The entity recoiled, shrieking in a chorus of voices, but the fire didn't consume the mirror. It spread outward, into the house, into the walls, into the air itself. Neighbors described seeing the Aldridge house shudder violently. Light burst from the windows, brighter than any fire, as if the house itself was exploding with radiance. Then, silence. When the light faded, the house stood intact. No flames, no smoke, but the Aldridges were gone. The last report from that night came from Officer Raymond Clark, who drove past at 3:11 a.m. The house looked dark, but as I slowed, I saw someone in the upstairs window. A man. He smiled at me, though the glass was black. His teeth gleamed like coins. When I blinked, he was gone. Clark never filed the report officially. It was found scribbled in his personal notebook after his death, and with that, the Aldridges vanished. But the room remained. By the summer's end, the Aldridge house stood untouched, as if nothing had happened. But behind its calm facade, the truth had already sunk its claws into history. The sealed room was never just a hidden chamber. It was a bargain, a ledger written in blood where every generation added their names, or disappeared, trying not to. In the ashes of the house, investigators later recovered scorched pages from John's mechanic's notebook. The handwriting began as his, then shifted into something jagged, uneven, almost claw-like. One entry read, "The carvings are records. Each mark is a family, each circle a name, each line a life taken. The room doesn't take all, just enough to keep the balance. That is the covenant. That is the cost." Another entry, almost entirely in smears. "The debt. It doesn't vanish, it passes. Whoever breaks the seal inherits it." That was me. Now it is us, and soon it will be more. Former Sheriff Elias Boone, long retired, admitted in a 1978 interview that he was called to the Aldridge property 1 week after the disappearance. The house looked fine from the outside. Inside, though, I can't explain it. The walls were wrong. Too many doors and none led where they should. The basement was worse. The room was there, wide open, with that mirror uncovered. I saw myself standing inside it, except I wasn't moving. My reflection smiled while I just stared. I left and never went back. Boone was visibly shaken, recalling the event, even decades later. Among the ruins, one charred scrap of Mary's journal survived, written hours before the family disappeared. The room doesn't show the future. It shows the debt. It showed me our children already gone. It showed me myself sealing the wall again. If anyone finds this, don't open it. Better to starve the house than to feed it. From the Carter journals, 1880s, and Aldridge fragments, scholars pieced together a disturbing truth. The sealed room was created during a ritual gone wrong in the 1800s. The mirror acted as a threshold, an anchor for something that couldn't fully cross into our world. To keep the balance, families were forced to feed it, one child each generation, willingly or not. If the ritual was broken, the entire family was taken. It wasn't haunting. It was accounting. The entity wasn't a ghost. It was a collector. Reports conflict about the final night, but several consistencies remain. Neighbors heard multiple screams, followed by silence. A bright, unnatural light filled the windows. Though no fire damage was ever found, the house trembled as though inhaling. Then, nothing. The Aldridge family was gone. No remains, no evidence of struggle. Just empty rooms and a mirror that never cracked. In 1962, the property was sold quietly to another family. Within months, they too left without explanation, abandoning possessions, leaving food on the table. The house changed hands 5 more times over the next decade. Each family lasted less time than the last. The final recorded occupant, a man named Richard Moore, left a chilling note in 1974. "It isn't the house that's cursed. It's the seal. Once it's opened, it follows you." I see them in every reflection now, not just the mirror. Storefront glass, pond water, even my wife's eyes when she sleeps. The room doesn't need walls anymore. It's everywhere. Moore vanished shortly after writing this. His car was found abandoned on the roadside. To this day, locals refuse to step foot on the Aldridge property. Hunters who pass by claim to hear crying in the woods. Some say they've seen the house standing whole again on foggy nights. Even though it was demolished decades ago, the county record still lists the basement's foundation as unaccounted for. The sealed room, they say, couldn't be filled. Every attempt to cover it collapsed, and always, the same warning surfaces. Whoever opens it inherits it. A final witness statement from a demolition worker in 1981 seals the terror. "We went down to the basement to break the foundation. Thought it'd be easy, but the mirror was still there. No cracks, no dust, just clean glass. My buddy looked into it and went pale. I asked what he saw. He said he saw his wife, except she was behind him. Then he dropped dead, right there on the concrete. I quit that night. That place ain't gone. It's waiting." The Aldridge family didn't just vanish. They were collected, and the collector is still hungry. By July of 1961, the Aldridge house was silent. No smoke rose from its chimney. No children played in the yard. The mailbox overflowed with letters that were never answered. The Aldridge family was gone, but the story was only beginning. The police report Sheriff Elias Boone's official case file, dated July 3, 1961, reads, "Arrived at the property with 2 deputies. House locked. Forced entry. No occupants found. Food on table, uneaten. Beds disturbed but not slept in. The basement revealed an unusual chamber. Stone walls, symbols carved. Central mirror intact. Dust layer inconsistent with rest of house. Appeared recently disturbed. No evidence of forced exit. The family declared missing. The report was marked closed, unsolved. But Boone's private notebook, discovered after his death, told more. When I looked into the mirror, I saw 4 figures standing behind me. Their mouths moved in silence. My deputies swore they saw nothing. I will not return. Mrs. Hawkins, the elderly neighbor who had warned Mary, gave her recollection to a local newspaper in 1965. I told her not to open it. I told her. That family wasn't the first. Won't be the last. Some places are hungry, and if you feed them, they'll never stop. That house is one of them. I still hear the girls' laughter when the wind's right. It comes from the old road. In 1972, a paranormal investigator named Henry Caldwell documented his experience inside the ruins. His notes survive in the archives of a now-defunct Texas magazine. The basement foundation remains, though the house is gone. The mirror is still present, glass unbroken. Felt immediate nausea upon entry. The temperature dropped 15 degrees. Reflection showed myself, older, gaunt, lips stitched shut. Voices whispered, "Your turn. Left within 5 minutes." Advised others to avoid the site. Caldwell retired from investigation shortly after. By the late 1970s, teenagers dared each other to visit the site. Stories spread. Some claimed to hear chains dragging beneath the earth. Others said they saw the Aldridge children staring from the tree line. One boy swore he touched the mirror and felt it pulse like skin. He never returned to the property again. The county eventually fenced the land off, citing hazardous conditions. But the legends grew louder. Though the Aldridge family was gone, their relatives spoke years later. Mary's sister recalled receiving a phone call days after the disappearance. When she answered, all she heard was Anna's voice whispering, "It's cold." The line went dead. Phone company records confirmed a call had been placed, from the Aldridge house. Daniel's classmate claimed he saw him after the disappearance, standing at the edge of the schoolyard, smiling silently before vanishing when a teacher approached. These accounts were dismissed as grief-fueled imagination, but they never stopped. In 1974, the county ordered the Aldridge house demolished. The structure came down, the wood burned, but the basement foundation remained. Workers reported strange resistance when they tried to fill it with concrete. The mixture cracked within days, seeping into the earth. The mirror remained upright in the center of the pit. One worker later told his wife, "It looked cleaner than the day I first saw it, like it wanted to be seen." In 1981, decades after the Aldridge disappearance, a state surveyor inspecting the land noted a strange detail. His log entry, basement site, partially intact. Mirror present. Observed reflection inconsistent. My back was to the sun, yet reflection cast a shadow in the opposite direction. Photograph attempted, film overexposed. Negative shows a faint outline of 4 figures standing together. The photo vanished from the state archives in 1983. Even today, locals avoid the site. Satellite images show only a patch of forest. But hikers report something different. A faint stone stairway leading underground. A smell of wet earth, copper, and smoke. The sound of children humming a song no one knows. Some claim the mirror still stands. Others swear it appears only to those who already know the story. In 1997, an anonymous letter was sent to the Huntsville Gazette. It read simply, "The room does not end. It moves. Whoever speaks of it feeds it. If you are reading this, you've already knocked." The Gazette never published the letter, but the editor kept it in a drawer until his death. The Aldridge family was never found. No graves, no bodies. Just whispers and fragments of journals that warn against opening what was never meant to be touched. But the sealed room cannot be erased. Every attempt to bury it, burn it, or wall it away has failed, because it isn't the room that matters. It's the debt, and debts, once written, are always collected. So if you ever find yourself in an old Texas farmhouse, and you notice bricks that don't match the wall, a hollow sound where there shouldn't be, turn back, because some doors aren't doors at all. They are invitations, and once opened, they never close the end.